Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Rachel. This is Karie, Archana, Brent, and Paul, and we are going to briefly discuss with you our topic, ethanol and fuel cells. So the first slide, thank you. Ethanol is a clean burning fuel, and it's made from renewable sources. It's produced from crops such as corn. And ethanol can be used in vehicles as fuel, which is called E85. That is where fuel is made with 85% ethanol and 15% unleaded gasoline. Only flexible fuel vehicles can use E85, and actually there are 6 million flexible fuel vehicles on the road today. Some benefits of ethanol, I'm just briefly going to say one of them, is it benefits the economy because it increases the demand for corn, and corn increases how much money that farmers can get for it, which then increases or brings economic development to the area. A little bit of the history, ethanol is actually, surprisingly, an ingredient for alcoholic beverages. Many people didn't know that. The first published formula for ethanol was in 1858 by Archibald Scott Cooper, and the first vehicle to use ethanol was the Ford Model T in the early 1900s. And now just briefly looking at fuel cells. What a fuel cell is it's very similar to a battery without having to recharge it. And it produces energy in the form of electricity. There are many different uses for fuel cells. The automaker industry, they're working on making fuel cell cars. And it can also be used in electrical machines such as vending machines, vacuum cleaners, laptops. And actually fuel cells, they became known in the 1800s, but it wasn't until the 1900s that it began to be researched and developed. And today researchers are hoping that sometime in the near future fuel cells will be used to power many homes across the country. So I'm going to hand it over to Archana, and she's going to talk to you a little bit more.
Thank you. I'm just going to continue with my fuel cells. As she described, fuel cell is generally an electrochemical energy conversion device. A fuel cell converts hydrogen and water into electricity. During this process, it converts, this electricity it will be converted into mechanical energy, which will overall efficiently increases the efficiency of any automobile. So during this, for this task, many countries have been coming forward to do an agreement with this International Energy Agency. Here the first agreement goes with it started at 1990 with 7 countries and a 5-year period for this, and then it started with 2 annexes, and now it is total of 21 annexes now. And the second phase, it started with 1996 to 1999 with 12 countries. So then again go ahead, it went on with 1999 to 2003 and another period for about 15 countries and 5 annexes. A new program has been started in 2004 to 2008. This here IEA is acting as just an umbrella, because this task has been shared by all the other countries, but it acts only as umbrella. And all the other countries has to provide its own. It has to bear all the cost by every country. And as I said, this task has been shared by all the countries, but there are only limited resources. Now the fuel cells have become the it's most costly because this now in the market it has to be around $35 per kilowatt, but now what is the cost is $110 per kilowatt. So in order to be in used by most of them, and it should be competitive enough into the market. So further researchers have been getting they are trying hard to reduce this cost and then finish it, use it widely, so that the main advantage with this fuel cell is it reduces pollution throughout the world. So many countries now they're trying for the many other linkages along with the IEA to join this and complete this task. Now I'm gonna hand over to Karie.
Okay, I'm just going to briefly go over some of the principles of ethanol. And as Rachel mentioned, there are a couple different ways that ethanol can be combined. There's E100, which is mainly only over in Brazil, and obviously cannot be shipped too far because of its highly explosive. The E85, which is just a combination of 15% gasoline and 85% ethanol, which is what we see here in the United States. And then the E10, which is very common to see at the gas stations. And there are a couple of different ways that it can be produced. I only thought it was corn, but as I looked into it, Brazil actually uses sugarcane plants to produce their ethanol, which I thought was kind of interesting. There are two different ways to mill the ethanol. There's dry milling, which is basically they take the corn kernels and they ground it into flour or meal, and then this meal's combined with water and then produced into a mash. The enzymes are then added and it's converted into a starch or a simple sugar. Ammonia is added to that to control the pH levels and to act as a nutrient. From there, the mash is taken to a high temperature cooker and bacteria is produced, and then it goes through a cooling process and transferred to a fermenter, which is kind of why, as Rachel said, it's kind of like a brewery. So it has to go through a fermenter. And this process could take up to 40 to 50 hours to complete. As I said, it's kind of referred to as a beer-type process because it goes through the fermentation cycle. And at this point, after it's transferred, it's mixed with anhydrous ethanol, which is blended with about 5% natural gas so that it cannot be consumed by humans and will not be subject to an alcohol tax. Wet milling is whenever the corn or the grain is soaked in water and sulfuric acid, and it takes about 24 to 48 hours to complete. And after this, it goes through a series of grinders to separate the corn, and then then goes through like a hydroclonic separator. This is commonly used as a dry distillerator grain that is sent out and fed to livestock. And then also they sometimes send it out to use for salt, mixed with salt on icy roads. The basics for fuel cells, there are about 4 types of different fuel cells: phosphoric acid, molten carbonate, solid oxide, and proton exchange membrane fuel cells. And they'll usually go into 3 different sections, which are fuel processor, which is a natural gas, is reformed to increase the concentration of hydrogen, a power selection, and a power condition. So for each one of these, the phosphoric acid usually is used to clean surfaces, tough surfaces. Solid oxide is usually it's a ceramic base fuel that is high heat resistant and it can process energy for electric plants. The proton exchange membrane, it's very, very expensive and usually only used for space exploration, but they are trying to develop it for vehicle use eventually. So I'll turn it over to Brent.
So I looked at the pros and cons of ethanol and fuel cell usage. One of the biggest pros, obviously, is that it's for ethanol, is that is a renewable energy, and with our world increasingly wanting to rely less on traditional fossil fuels, it's a great alternative. Another advantage of ethanol, but more in its fuel cell usage, is that when used in fuel cells, it's cost effective and efficient, and there is a research team based in the United States and internationally that's been working on the use of ethanol for extraction of hydrogen and use in fuel cells. The wonderful thing about all fuel cells is their only byproduct is water, and of course the corn. The wonderful thing for us is it can be made here in the USA, and it can also be made, of course, in other countries as well. The biggest disadvantage of fuel cells right now, and probably the reason why most of us aren't driving around in cars with fuel cells, is storage capacity. pure hydrogen occupies 3,000 times the space of traditional gasoline. Well, we'd all be either driving gigantic cars, or they're going to have to come up with some new technology to store the hydrogen in a compact area, as well as utilize that tightly compressed or stored hydrogen to make it possible. One of the problems I've run into is that, of course, being hydrogen, it is somewhat unstable when condensed, and so it is going to be somewhat challenging to find a way to utilize it as the fuel for the future. Another dilemma that we face is there's no hydrogen fuel station infrastructure right now. In other words, even if you had a car that would run on hydrogen by utilizing a fuel cell, where would you get gas? A good thing that's come of ethanol is if ethanol can be used to produce hydrogen for fuel cells, there's a lot of places that corn can be grown and also moved to in order to provide a source for the hydrogen fuel. So ethanol and fuel cells could be the perfect mix for the fuel of the future. Another potential con, though, is that, as was mentioned before, there's other renewable sources that are being looked into, sugar cane, and in Illinois we have prairie grass, which is being considered as a great alternative. One of the nice things about prairie grass and some of the other grasses that could potentially be used to produce hydrogen for fuel cells is it puts nitrates into the ground, which is good for the earth. So those are some of the pros and cons.
Thank you, Brent. I'm Paul Wikoff. I'm going to tell you a little about the issues with ethanol and the different sides involved. For the fuel consumer, which is most people that drive and need transportation, is right now the gas prices have gotten fairly high and are likely to go higher this summer and for the future. It's very unlikely that we will return to $1.50 gasoline. And so the economic incentive is there to start finding these alternative fuels. Another aspect involved with the fuel consumer with ethanol is the concern of lower fuel economy. Ethanol has a lower amount of energy per unit than gasoline has, so the consumer needs to know that that is going to occur, and also realize that the price of ethanol is usually lower than the price of gasoline, and there are also tax incentives, tax rebates that can be used to offset that. Also, most cars can run on the E10 blend, so they would still be using 90% gasoline, but the 6 million flex fuel vehicles, like my wife and I have, can run on 85% ethanol, greatly reducing the amount of petroleum that's used and the pollution levels. Another side is the farmers and agribusinesses and the ethanol biorefineries. By using any kind of crop for making ethanol, because many crops can be used to make ethanol, and at some point we will hopefully switch over from corn into, well, in addition to corn, probably into the prairie grasses and miscanthus. It supports the prices that farmers receive for their crops. When farmers get paid more for their crops, there's more money in the local economy, and it boosts the local economy. Also, these biorefineries provide jobs, and each job that's needed at the biorefinery needs people supporting it with their jobs in the service community. What it'll also do is grain prices are worldwide, so if the grain price goes up in America, it also goes up across the world. So the impoverished nations and their farmers will benefit from higher grain prices. Another side to the ethanol issue is the oil industry. Basically, ethanol is a direct competitor to petroleum. So it is up to these companies, if they want to join in and be part of the migration towards biofuels, which would be similar to what we've seen with other technologies. You start out with one technology and work your way into another technology, and you become a different business with the same name. Some oil companies are doing this. BP has recently joined with DuPont to spend $500 million at UC Berkeley and the University of Illinois to do research on ethanol and biofuels. and Marathon is joining with the Andersons Grain Company to build ethanol biorefineries. I believe there are some others also that are starting to get on board with that. And they're a great, obviously making hundreds of billions of dollars, they're a great source of research dollars to make this happen. Another side is the fuel stations. Right now, fuel stations actually make very, very little money, and many of them lose money selling gasoline because it's the oil companies that are receiving, and the refineries that are receiving the $2.85 that you're spending on gasoline. And the fuel stations mostly make their money by selling soda and popcorn and chips and that kind of stuff. One aspect with the fuel stations is it is expensive for them to install their pumps. So if they're able to use a current pump with a gas tank that can hold it, that usually costs a couple $1,000s for them to switch over, and there are tax incentives for them to decrease that cost. But also, it can cost a couple $100,000 to dig up the ground and put a tank in and put in a whole new pump. And there are tax incentives to help with that as well, tax rebates. The environmentalist side of the ethanol issue, there are positives and concerns about the ethanol issue. Many of the positives have to do with the decreased use of petroleum, the decreased carbon dioxide in the air because it's a cyclical nature, it just keeps on going through the crops, and the decreased smog, which helps with people's health. Many people die every year just from smog. One of their fears is that if we pour too much into biofuels, too much interest and too much money into it, well, we won't be interested in spend money on other things such as increasing fuel economy of vehicles. So there are a number of environmentalists that are actually against ethanol, mostly because they want to support their own different type of technology. And then the other side would be the United States soldiers. Just about everybody, even people in the petroleum industry, have family members that are over fighting in the Middle East. And most people would agree that although they may have all kinds of reasons to be fighting over there, the government really needs the constant flow of petroleum coming here. So the less dependent we are on foreign oil, the less costly it is to provide the military over there. And how do you fix the cost to all the lost lives of the soldiers? Present and future, this will wrap up our presentation. Right now there is a rapid expansion in the biofuels industry, especially ethanol. Last year there was 3 billion gallons produced. Right now we can produce 5 billion gallons with all the ethanol refineries coming online. And a year and a half from now they'll be able to do 8 to 12 billion gallons of ethanol. So it's very quickly growing. But still that's only about 10% of our gasoline fuel supply that we would replace with ethanol. As far as the politics, many politicians are getting on board and supporting it, trying to get more of the fuel stations to supply it, trying to get more of the vehicles out there to the public through like GM and Ford, and also just plain government mandates as far as a certain percentage of our fuel has to be through biofuels. The flex fuel vehicles and E85 pumps, there are 6 million on the road right now, vehicles that can drive on E85, but very few of them actually fill up with E85 because there aren't enough pumps. So they're putting gasoline in, or they just don't know, so they're putting gasoline in and the tank is right over there for the E85. Also, one current concern is the UL has not certified the E85 pumps yet, so a number of stations are concerned about putting it in, even though something like 1,200, 1,500 stations have put in E85 pumps at this point. A number of them are waiting for the certification to happen. And also what is happening is there are just more and more stories in the press recently about E85 pumps being put in and about ethanol in general and the industry. Concern is with the corn supply. There's only so much corn that can be used for ethanol. We also have to feed our livestock and use products for some of the food that we consume, although not as much. Like if you eat sweet corn, that's sweet corn. It's not regular corn used for ethanol. One of the promising things is if we get this cellulose ethanol cost low enough, we can produce a whole lot more ethanol per acre than what we do with corn and greatly improve our efficiency there. BP and DuPont are working on this project, and also a product called biobutanol, which is similar to ethanol but has equal energy, more or less, to gasoline, so you wouldn't even have that fuel economy decrease. And there are several other advantages. So as they bring the price of producing that down, because they can make it, it's just you have to bring the price down so it's competitive with gasoline, then we can use that, and you can use it in any car. And then, so the future would be pretty bright there if they can get that going, as well as with cellulosic ethanol. So that wraps up our presentation. And Dr. Wahby, I was just wondering, are we doing questions and answers, or are we going to keep moving for time?
If you have any questions, I can give you them. Please say your name first and then question.
Eric Knuth. The biobutanol,
Yeah,
can it be blended with gasoline?
most definitely. Yeah, biobutanol can blend with gasoline, can blend with ethanol. In fact, when they first start making it, they're figuring what they're going to do is put the biobutanol in with the E85, so you have no petroleum product in there at all. It'll just be partially biobutanol and the rest ethanol until they switch over these plants, because these plants that they're building, they can switch over to make biobutanol with. So as those switch over, they'll produce more and more biobutanol and less ethanol.
Do you know approximately what the cost would be to have a non-petroleum gallon of fuel? Like if the 15% biobutanol and the 85% ethanol?
Well, it ranges anywhere from, when you buy E85 right now, it can be anywhere from 10 cents lower per gallon, which economically doesn't work out very well unless if you take advantage of the tax rebates, to 50 cents. I've even seen 85 cents to $1 cheaper per gallon. Not locally, but...
I meant without petroleum whatsoever. Like a
Oh, just straight ethanol?
No, a biobutanol with an ethanol solution where it was, you just mentioned no petroleum.
Well, the ethanol right now, the spot price is about $2.30, I believe. But biobutanol is much more expensive. It's probably $4 or $5, $6 to produce biobutanol right now. So as they're improving technology, that happened with ethanol too. They brought the price down, and they'll do the same with the biobutanol. So the combination would be higher than with gasoline at this point. You're welcome.
Hi, my name is Raju. I'm wondering this because ethanol and biobutanol, because these are two different things. I'm worried that's not going to start a race like Betamax and VHS, because two people are using two different things.
Very good question. Actually, what'll be great is when we get to biobutanol, because right now you have to have a flex fuel vehicle because you don't know if the gas station is going to have one fuel or the other. But the biobutanol, you can put in any vehicle because it's not as corrosive, and you also get better gas mileage anyway with it. So they won't necessarily compete, but it'll just be a transition of more and more of it will be put into the fuel supply because it's more advantageous to use it.
But it's going to exist together, or
Oh, no, that's to be decided, but they probably will have biobutanol where you can just put it in your car, and then they may have like a 50-50 gasoline and biobutanol, and then they'll probably have an ethanol. And just depending on the type of car you have, you'll fill up with whichever one makes sense price-wise at the time and what you can use.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
One more question.
Josh Norman, what car manufacturer is leading in the flex fuel race? I mean, what car manufacturer is manufacturing the most flex fuel vehicles?
Good question. They're mostly the domestic producers. It's Ford, GM, Daimler Chrysler, which has the Dodge line. Those three produce probably 90% of them. There are foreign ones also. Toyota very soon will introduce it. Nissan just started introducing it, I believe, in the last couple of years. And surprisingly, like Mercedes has had one for a while. And as it's catching on, other ones are starting to put them in. But really what it is most of them, because of the CAFE standards, which I don't have too much time to talk about, are the ones that have big trucks and SUVs because they get federal credit for making those as a flex fuel vehicle.
Would you please join me in thanking this group? Thank you very much.